All right. My name is Brian Banks, and I am from Your Career Day, and I thank you for being here. Can you tell us your name?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Michael Randall,
Okay, Michael, where is your hometown?
Willow Run, USA.
All right. Say it loud and proud. What is your career title?
My career title, I would say urban planner slash community developer.
Okay. And what does that entail?
A lot of things. I would say there's a spectrum when it comes to urban planning. There's more like classical urban planning, as some in the industry say, where it is more along the lines of land use. And so you might have a city planning department or a county planning department or a township planning department
Mhm.
that's ran by a planner. And that essentially is an individual who operates off of a county, a city, or a township's master plan for
Mhm.
land use. There are several different variations of land use, but most notable, of course, is residentially zoned land.
Okay.
So that's land that you can only build residential structures on. There's commercially zoned properties where, of course, that is a downtown area, a shopping mall, gas station, small corner store, things like that.
Mhm.
And then there's industrial use land where you have, large plants like Willow Run,
Right.
Bomber plant, the historical plant, Ford plants, right?
Right.
Even like waste management will be considered industrial land use. And so you have a planner that works to really enforce uh, the land use to make sure that when site plans comes in that is congruent with the master plan of said city, township, or locality, right? So that's more classical planning, and then on
Mhm.
the more on the other spectrum of planning is more like community development, which is more what I do, which involves um, community engagement, so engaging with residents, doing housing, um, you know, uh, commercial corridor development, and that can mean like, the strip up and down a large commercial corridor,
Mhm.
economic development, supporting small businesses and whatnot. So as you can see, all of that still has some of that classical planning in it in terms of land use. But I don't work for like a planning department and whatnot. I work for a community development organization.
Okay.
So that's pretty much what the role of a planner is.
Okay. Now, what type of education is required to do this?
So it depends. If you're more on the classical side, you would need a bachelor or a master's in urban planning, and also be accredited through the Michigan Planning Association.
Okay.
And so, and of course, that requires having not only the education of planning, but several years of experience. Um, and then you have individuals like myself who have a degree in urban planning, but I'm not necessarily accredited. So I'm more on the side of community development. But it depends on what you want to do. I would say, having a master's in urban planning, having that classical academic uh, foundation in your career is super helpful. I'm really glad that I went the route of more classical planning in terms of my academia, because it really helps in the work that I do day to day. So I would say at least a bachelor's and being accredited through the Michigan Planning Association or the APA, which is the American Planning Association.
Okay. What type of person is best suited to do planning?
I would say an individual that has a strong passion for community, someone that enjoys interacting with peoples and individuals, um, an individual that has an affinity for real estate, someone who enjoys interacting and interfacing with the business community, and somebody that's not really afraid of politics, right?
Okay.
As you can imagine, land use, it can be extremely political. I'm pretty sure you heard the term not in my backyard, right? People not wanting housing in their backyard. Like they can be a huge advocate for it, but just not in my backyard. You know what I mean? And so sometimes urban planning and community development and land use can be very political and very contentious. And so somebody that's not necessarily afraid to get into that, and also just an individual that wants to see things change, right? You might be, living in a community or an area or in a neighborhood, and you see blight, or you see, not a lot of businesses thriving, or you hear the stories from yesteryear when your auntie or your grandmother talks about when there was a ice cream shop on that street, and a hair salon over there, and a movie theater over there, and now there's nothing there. And it's like, you might be a person that say, you know what, I'm gonna do something about that. So I would say that those are the attributes that really would make somebody want to get into the field, but also, find ways to be successful in the field.
Okay. Now, what was your road to your current position? How'd you get here?
Oh man, I took the road probably less traveled for most planners. So I knew I always wanted to be in this space. When I was little, I used to build little towns and little streets and stuff and little buildings. I always wanted to do this type of work. I didn't know what it was in terms of like the actual career path, but I knew I wanted to do this type of work. So when I started school, I actually was a communications and journalism major at first.
Okay.
And when I transferred to U of M Dearborn, literally, like, I was walking down a hallway in one of the schools, one of the buildings, and I seen a sign that said Urban and Regional Studies, and it had like a little map on it, and it was an informational flyer about the program. And literally when I saw it, I still can remember it to this day. When I saw it, I was like, oh, I'm changing my major. That's what I want.
Wow.
I knew it right then and there. Like, I was like, yep, that's it. And so immediately I changed my major. I had to do an extra year actually because I changed my major. I took a public policy internship, and I found my own internship. I did my internship with the Ypsilanti Housing Commission, which was an amazing experience because they were going through a lot of changes, developing additional affordable housing in Ypsilanti. And so that was a great experience for me to actually see all of these components that I mentioned earlier kind of at play at one time. The political side of it, the community engagement, procurement, and actually building structures. Like, I seen the whole gamut. And so that's when I knew I wanted to really be in this space. Did my internship. I was really hoping that I would end up getting a job there. I didn't. But I ended up getting the executive director, who's still the executive director, Zach Fosler, sent me a application to apply for an AmeriCorps position at the county public health department.
Okay.
I was like, I really don't want to do that, but it was a position. It didn't pay well, but it paid. And I was like, you know what, whatever. And so I applied for it, and I started working for the health department, working in the Washington Health Plan office. Again, it wasn't planning, it wasn't housing, it wasn't real estate, it wasn't community development, but I always like to tell people that I mentor and people that I talk to, say yes more than you say no, because you don't know where those roads are going to lead. And so I worked there under Ellen Rabinowitz, who was at the time the county health officer, who also had a master's in urban planning from U of M. So I was like, that's interesting. Like I didn't really see health as a
Mhm.
as a route in urban planning, but I'm like, sure, why not?
Yeah.
And so I kind of talked to her and figured out like how did she end up in the health space. And that's when, you know, I started seeing the different opportunities within the health space, right? And so I stayed at the health plan. I did a short stint at Habitat for Humanity. Then I went back to a health plan that operated out in the Wayne County area, which led me to move to Detroit. Um, and then I ended up at the American Heart Association,
Okay.
where um, you know, this is very interesting. The Heart Association was recently just getting into doing more community development work
Okay.
because heart disease is preventable, right? And so
Right.
when we think about the ways that it's preventable, a lot of it falls under, you know, these things called social determinants, you know, housing, transportation, education, food access, things like that, right? And so I'm like, oh, wow, here we go. I can kind of be a planner,
Right.
but work in this health space and advocate for all of these changes to the environment that would be more conducive to people's overall health, right? And so I got there, started off as a director, you know, got promoted and was able to manage a department that did this work around what we call health equity planning, where we
Right.
would work with different city departments, and we worked in the city of Flint, Wayne and Westland, around creating appropriations around you know, more green spaces, places for outdoor activity, housing, all of these things, and we did it under the guise of, you know, cardiovascular health, which was
Right.
tremendously successful, right? Um, and then through that work, my network grew, and then I got the opportunity to apply for my current role, which is the executive director of the Grandmont Rosedale Development Corporation, where I get to bring all my experience
Mm-hmm.
into one organization: Habitat, Health Department, Ypsilanti Housing Commission, AmeriHealthcare, TASC, American Heart Association. I get to bring that all health and community development all into one. And that's kind of how I ended up here. And so, again, didn't know that, you know, most people would see me now and say, okay, yeah, it makes sense. Urban planning, you work for a community development corporation and you get to do all of this planning work. I'm like, yeah, but it took me 10 years to get here. You know what I
Okay.
mean? And so, you know, I always tell people, you know, say yes more than you say no, because again, all roads, if you are consistent, will lead to the path that you want to go.
Yeah, that's great advice.
Mhm.
Now, what makes this career fun, interesting, or exciting, or all of the above?
Oh man, every day is different.
Mm-hmm.
And going back to you know, the community engagement part of it, the political part of it, it is very, very exciting, right? When we're talking about taking dilapidated structures um, and renovating them, like
Mm-hmm.
that's very exciting. Like they got a whole network around the HGTV, right? And
Yeah.
so it's very exciting, but at the same time, it's extremely challenging. Like um, putting the funding together,
Mm-hmm.
getting the right political actors involved,
Yeah.
uh, getting community buy-in, right? You know, doing market feasibility, making sure that your project is actually feasible for the
Yeah.
community that you're trying to build it in, right? There's never a dull moment because you wake up one day and it's like there's a new challenge in front of you.
Yeah.
And we're always marching towards that end goal of improving the community, but there's a lot of different layers you got to get through.
Right.
So to me, that's what makes it exciting,
Yeah.
because there's always a new challenge. There's always a new opportunity to take this thing to the next level,
Yeah.
and you know that's what keeps me up. And I mean, every day I don't feel like it doesn't feel like work. And I know
Yeah.
that sounds so cliche,
Mm-hmm.
because it is 100% difficult, you
Right.
know, but I know that I'm moving in the in a space that I've always wanted to operate in,
Right.
and I love that I'm constantly being challenged because it makes it interesting.
Okay. All right. Now, my final question. What advice would you give to someone that might want to follow in your footsteps?
Oh man. I already said one, say yes more than you say no.
Right.
Obviously it needs to be ethical. So that goes without saying,
Yeah.
don't just agree to do some crazy stuff. But if it's within your ethics, within your worldview, of how you want to proceed in your career, say yes. Make yourself available. Show up on time.
Mhm.
Stay longer. You know what I mean? And ask questions. Ask the dumb question.
Yeah.
Ask any question. Because there are so many people that are waiting to pay it forward, right?
Yeah.
Because somebody helped them. And
Right.
so they're waiting to see that one individual that's going to stick their neck out there, at the expense of potentially looking stupid, right? It's
Mhm.
like, oh, that person, I can work with that person because
Yeah.
that person they don't care what people think. They're going to get where they want to go, and I'm going to help them. And what
Right.
I found in my career is that people are willing to go, that meet me halfway. People
Mhm.
have met me 90% of the way.
Yeah.
I did 10% and they came the rest of the 90% because they
Right.
were so eager to pay it forward.
Yeah.
So I would say always look for that, look for good mentors, um, look for great mentors.
Yeah.
Like I said,
Yeah.
there's individuals that are waiting to help you, and uh, believe in what you want to do,
Yeah.
and never stop believing, man. Somebody told me when I switched my degree path to urban planning, somebody said, "Well, there's no jobs in urban planning." My
Mhm.
response was, I said, "If there's one job, I'll
Right.
have it.
Right.
If
There you
there's
go.
one job, that'd be my job." And here I am sitting 10 years later with a one of one job. There are not two executive directors of GRDC. There's one of one. And
Yeah.
so that's the type of goal that you need to have. And that's when it's most rewarding.
All right, man. Thank you, Michael. I really appreciate your time.
Absolutely, man.
And I thank you for being here and wish you all the best moving forward.
Yeah, man. And thank you for what you're doing, because this is so important. Young people mean a lot to me, a huge burden. And so I want to see more of us, more individuals from our community, from our background,
Right.
leading out in these spaces because we have a competitive advantage when it comes to connecting with certain communities. And so we need to be in more of these spaces. So thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you.